When the rain don't fall, that's when you know you're gonna go dry. When the rain don't fall, that's when you know you're gonna go dry. And it won't do no good to be crying out loud, babe, or cursing the sky.
Welcome to Thinking Green. I'm Rana, and tonight is the last show before Election Day. We're kind of taking a break next week because we'll all be at the polls, and I hope you will be as well. But tonight? So tonight's guests are the three Green Party candidates: Leon Long for mayor, Seanice Austin for city council, and Keith Kimball for Board of Education. And the signs behind them, well, you can't see them all, are in the order that they're sitting in. So each of them has been on the show at least once over the last month or so. So I'm not going to ask them what their backgrounds are again, but what I'm going to start out by asking them, and you can choose whatever order you want to speak in, is the last couple weeks since you've been on the show last, since campaign season has been full swing, can each of you talk a little bit about your experiences of the last couple weeks, the
Sure.
waiting days?
I can go first.
Go for it, Seanice.
Alrighty, so because I'm new to this, you guys have been in this political space for a while now,
True.
but I'm
You
new
would
to
know it, though.
campaigning, and it has been very interesting for me. Partly not only because this is a new space for me, but coming out of the pandemic, I had sort of gotten accustomed to being home. And one of the great things that has come out of this for me is, just getting back out and meeting people and face to face. I've been in the Zoom world for work for a lot of the time. And so this has allowed me to really interact with people. I've gone to my first debate, which was held by Hearing Youth Voices and the People's Budget, young folks. So that was very interesting. I also got a chance to attend a housing authority commission meeting and to hear from residents, to hear about the different concerns that people have about the different areas of the city. And I went to the two openings. One was for Toby May Park, which I was pleasantly surprised because while I'm newly running for office, I have been engaged with the city in different, capacities. So I was co-chair of the Health and Human Services Committee, which was a part of the mayor's long-term planning committee, and I was co-chair of that. And we submitted at the end of our term, we submitted a recommendations report on things that can be done with some of the federal funding we received for COVID-19. And one of the recommendations was to have an outdoor workout facility to encourage families, individuals, to address obesity and young people as well as adults, to have a workout facility outdoors. And so I didn't know that was something that the city was moving forward with. So I was pleasantly surprised when I went
That's
to the
great.
opening to see that there. That was awesome. And I went to the opening of the Innovation Center downtown where the Chamber of Commerce will now be housed. And that was also a great event to interact and see people. So it's been great. And our office is right there as well.
It is.
Yeah.
Across from the tax collector.
Absolutely. So it was great. It's been really it's been going really well so far. Just door knocking. We're going to be doing more of that and telephone calls as well. So we're pushing forward to the end. So I'm excited.
Mine was the longest, so he should probably go.
To add, I did also join the candidate forum with Seanice. That was a pleasure, hosted by Hearing Youth Voices and Fresh New London. Last Tuesday, we had the New London Arts Council meeting. The main topic was, art opportunities coming up in New London in December. I've been fortunate enough to work really close with Barbara Neff on some opportunities coming to our artists this winter. That meeting was held at the Women's Business Development Council. On October 2nd, I was invited to speak at a Hate Has No Home Here rally in East Lyme. I was invited by one of my former partners from PARJ, Public Art for Racial Justice Education, and that's some of the best, that's some of the work I'm most proud of, I'd have to say, is literally getting a chance to go into other communities and push for racial justice. So if anyone is questioning my willingness to do it here at home, you shouldn't, because I'll go anywhere and do that. And so I was invited to this rally that was held in East Lyme that was in response to an actual national hate group leaving messages, disparaging messages against lots of different groups, painting swastikas in city parks. There was messages of hate on Indigenous Peoples Day, and even in an occurrence in Norwich that I'm not familiar with, but they have a pattern, so I was happy to speak out against that. And just a quick little shout out for PARJ. I helped them develop a region-wide mural program, and the, I believe, 5th most recent mural will be unveiled on November 5th in Old Saybrook. All of them contain messages of racial justice, so I'm very proud of that work. Tuesday the 24th, invited to speak at the Housing Authority resident meeting with Seanice. That was very eye-opening.
And we might talk more about housing.
Yeah. Well,
it's a big issue.
Yes. Something that I'm pretty proud of, on the 25th, that was last Wednesday, I joined my fellow co-chair, Emma Palzier-Ray, on the New London Arts Council. We joined Felix Reyes, Rich Martin, some representatives from the Cultural Coalition, Kia Baird, Elizabeth Nocera from the city, Liz Shapiro of the Connecticut Office of the Arts, and Wendy Vincent of the Golden Owl here in New London for a guided tour of our cultural district. This was for the new executive director of the New England Foundation of the Arts, whose name is Harold Stewart. He's been doing a lot of great work in the theater world to give more visibility and opportunities to gay and trans people in theater. And speaking of the Cultural District, I was fortunate enough to be invited to join a brainstorming and research effort hosted by the city with a firm they contracted with to create a wayfinding program for downtown. This meeting actually included Mayor Pazaro. That was kind of neat. But the wayfinding program is just, signs to get people to and fro downtown, and that's something that I've been looking into myself. That's actually part of a program that I've been thinking about, so I was happy to be included in that. And most importantly, I hosted a Halloween party last Friday for an art entity in the city. Spark Maker Space, a community creative space here in New London, hosts a Halloween party every year, and I was able to host it this year, and that was cool. That's what I've been up to. Not a lot.
Not a lot.
It's been, I think, 2 weeks.
Right. And
Yeah, I'm exhausted reading that list.
that was a lot in 2 weeks. I was like,
The life
Go
of
Eddie,
the life of a
right?
candidate, but we love that
two,
stuff.
With 2 jobs.
Yeah,
by the
we
way.
love that stuff.
Well, I think for you it's been 3 weeks, Keith.
At
So what
least,
does
yeah,
your
it was like
list
most of
look like?
October, and wow, like so much has happened. So the normal stuff, and some not so normal stuff, but overall positive. I was down in my district, door knocking and distributing literature. I try to get to as many meet and greets and public events as possible, see people, talk to them, introduce myself. So what was the first one? The first one was I went to the Republican Party's meet and greet at Rita's, right. I did that. I was at our HQ grand opening, and we did that. I was at Hearing Youth Voices debate. See, this is the unusual thing, is that I was in 2 Board of Ed debates last election. One was League of Women Voters / NAACP, and the other, I want to say, was Hearing Youth Voices.
Might have been.
Either that or Step Up. I feel bad that I don't remember because they were both really, really good debates. And, those were 2 debates with the BOE and the council, and I remember nobody showed up for the Republicans for the Board of Ed, and I'm talking to every single one of the Democrat candidates, just really surprised and shocked.
Right.
And this time, there wasn't even one. And then I go to the Hearing Youth Voices debate, and Nathan Caron's there with me, and we're like, where is everybody? And it's like, are we having a Board of Ed debate? I said, no. And he was surprised. But to his credit, he showed up, and Jeff Hart showed up. And I thought that it was a very spirited debate between the 3 of them. And I also saw a lot of common ground. And honestly, all 3 of them won my vote in that debate, for sure.
Right.
Because they both want to plan for the future. They realize that we have to pay as we go, and that requires planning and not wasting things. So but that's what you get from debates. And I was really disappointed. So knocking on doors and talking to people, I'm hearing other people really disappointed, like, where is everybody?
Right.
And we're 3 people, with some volunteers. So trying to cover the voters on foot for us is really difficult, but we still do it. I'm 53. I've been walking 45 miles a day, knocking on doors and going downtown. So we get it done. He's got 2 jobs. You run a business. I'm retired, but I have a 10-year-old in the public school system, and I am everywhere doing everything and trying to fill this in. And but really positive voter experiences. I get a neighbor who walks by my porch, and when I'm relaxing, anytime at all, I'm on my porch if the weather's decent, and I say, hi, how you doing? And she says hi, and she walks, sees my signs, and says, are you Keith Kimball? And I'm like, yeah, I admitted I was. And, I never know where it's going to go.
You can't get away from it now.
Right. I'm in this. People recognize me, I guess. And she said, can you tell me what you want to do? And I said, well, I'm running for the Board of Ed and blah blah blah. And she said, yeah, but what do you want to do? She says, I have kids in the district. Live in New London. I've never voted in New London, not in 25 years. And I said, I want to make the New London district, the administration, more responsive and accountable to families. And she said, do you have a voter card? I'm going to vote in my first election.
Nice.
That's huge for me.
Yeah.
Huge.
A friend of mine, Amber, who we're helping out a little bit, she wants to vote for the first time in her life. And I've been getting people recognizing me in public. It's like, Amber Green, and I'm like, yeah, I do, So these connections, and they're everywhere, but you have to go out and make them, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the bottom line. But the thing that was most pleasant for me is I'm an artist. I studied at Mass Art. My original high school before I came to New London, had a huge art program. And I tried to start a career here in arts in the 90s, and it didn't take off. But I never stopped doing it. I just stopped displaying it in public. And just for fun, I went on to New London Strong, and I started putting up my pictures of New London buildings and architecture, which I dearly love, and I will never be able to take pictures of all the beautiful features of our buildings and houses.
Even walking 45 miles a day, right?
No, I'm still going down the streets and seeing new things. And, I just put them up, and they're candid shots with my iPhone. It's not even my professional equipment, but I do my best. And it just exploded. And I'm walking downtown, it's like, you're Keith Kimball, aren't you? It's like, I love your pictures. And then it just segues right into, aren't you running? So that was amazing. And all I wanted to do is just connect to more New Londoners in something that was non-political that we could all appreciate, art.
Yeah.
Eddie's not wrong. Art is extremely important to New London every way, including economic.
It opens a lot of
Well,
doors.
just to add on to what you shared, Keith, I got a phone call today. I did door knocking over at the Hempstead high rises, and I got a phone call today from one of the residents who was there with a couple of people in his apartment, and he said, "We have your door hanger. Can you tell us a little bit about the Green Party?"
Nice.
Wow,
Yeah,
Wow.
today. And so I
that's
didn't think of that.
fantastic.
It really was. So we
Yeah.
had a conversation, and they had me on speakerphone, and
Nice.
I'm talking to residents and sharing the Green Party.
And that means people are interested and people are responding to the things
and they
that we
want
want to
something
do.
different.
They
you
want
know,
something
they didn't.
different.
They didn't just say, "Oh, we're going with our normal
Right.
folks that we vote for."
Right.
They want to learn about who is this other party.
Right.
What are they about? And
Right.
they've actually asked me. They're going to try to get together and reserve their meeting room that they have on the first floor. And I told them, if you can get it done by the weekend,
Yeah, we've got
Right.
all
Right.
the-
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the whole building. We'll definitely
Right.
be there.
Sure will.
And anytime before Election Day, we'll be happy to. And maybe we can also arrange
would be
for
great.
transportation,
Transportation,
if
like
needed.
a sign up there
Yeah.
would be
Yeah.
great.
Absolutely. So, and that just came up today.
It's funny you say, you're getting the sense people want something different, and
room
what
for that,
what that
right?
actually looks like is something they can relate to. So there's some
Absolutely.
similarity that they're looking for
Right.
too. It's a weird dichotomy, but thinking about what Keith said, the opportunity to relate to people, you take it wherever you can get it. Even if that means you've got to sacrifice a little bit, take time away from something else, it's very important. And it brings up a good point that actually Ron had brought up recently about what type of people run for office and at what level.
Right.
And on a national level, we see a lot of well-to-do incumbents that have, that are retired but have lots of money and can afford to just spend their time doing this. And the reality is that's not always the type of candidate that enters into local politics. There's some sacrifices that have to be made. It's time, it's money, because you're taking away time sometimes from work. And that's just the reality. So I think that people appreciate that. They know it without it being mentioned, that you have other things to do. A parent has plenty to do, especially outside of school hours. And so to make the time to try to hit the pavement and shake hands and interact with our residents, even over the phone, I think it goes a long way in helping them relate to you and see a similarity, which they appreciate because that feels different than what they're used to now in their incumbents.
I think that's true. And I see the phone number is up on screen. And if anyone wants to have a final shot at asking a candidate a question or all the candidates' questions, you can feel free to call in. But I guess we can talk about a few of the issues. I know each of you has a couple issues you're particularly passionate about, and other issues have come up while talking to people at the various house parties and meetings that you've been attending. So I don't know, what topic do you want to talk about first? Do you want to talk about the mayoral stuff to start with? It's all
Sure.
linked. But
Oh, it's all linked.
Each position has a different piece of the puzzle.
Sure. Well, I guess I would start with, downtown becomes a very big focus in a New London race. That's where a lot of our businesses are centralized, of course. A lot of the activity on the weekends or when we have events takes place downtown. And so then the subject turns to what does downtown look like? And everybody knows that there are these gaps and kind of has an idea of why that is. And everybody laments it, but it's hard to come up with ideas to solve those issues. And not everybody has the time for that sort of thing. We have a city government who should be devoted to that subject, and the years are just ticking and ticking and ticking and ticking, and there's no solutions passed or pushed forward to seriously address those spaces. And so just to run down a little bit of specific policy ideas, I love the idea of shared retail space for businesses. No matter the size of a business, the option for two companies to share that space, to combine efforts on rent, and to make the space come alive again is very appealing to me. Programs to help some businesses that exist online get into a brick and mortar location, also of high interest to me. Those businesses are going to hit the ground running in a brick and mortar location because they have an established fan base, or some customers that already buy from them, that would love to meet them and interact with them and see what they have in terms of a space. That sort of thing personally interests me. How a space or how a business uses its space to reflect what its mission is interesting stuff to somebody who comes from marketing and promoting like me. So that's the perspective I bring to that as a city leader, if I'm lucky enough to get this position. I think that's lacking now. I think everything is by the numbers, and everything can't be by the numbers. There's got to be creativity in there wherever you can. And that certainly includes when there's problems that we've just not been able to find a solution to. You can't keep drudging up the same solutions for these problems that aren't working. It's just not going to help. And then more specifically, something like a commercial vacancy ordinance, which is a program for registration and even regulation of some of these businesses, or some of these properties. Vacancy registry bill also does a lot to help the city account for those spaces and what's being done in them. To my understanding, the city has hired a contractor to establish which spaces in our city are empty and who owns them. That costs money. So I think that that's happened, and if it has, then maybe we take that and we work with it, and if we had something like a vacancy registry bill in place, we can ensure that we don't have to ever do that again. Because the city, yes, yeah. Well, I mean, right.
Right.
It's a crazy concept, but I think it can work for us, planning ahead.
Cheaply.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we are in kind of a unique situation right now because we're kind of coming out of COVID. It's sort of with us, but in a different way. It's more of a chronic situation, but we just can't live our lives in hibernation any
Right.
longer.
Right.
So it sounds as though a lot of the things you're thinking about are ways to start adapting to a world where COVID isn't the one thing our lives all are surrounded with.
Yeah, something like the Lyman Allen recently received a grant, some real help in effort to expand what they have available on their grounds, which is great. And something that they're still fighting for is an outdoor amphitheater, which I'd love to see happen. And that would mean a lot of daytime shows, and so, that's just something that popped in my head, but that leads me to the next point, which is, a real big focus of mine would be to address not just the empty spaces, but the businesses we have now. I mean, we're losing businesses. Newsflash, we are losing businesses. Important, big, famous businesses that we've had are just going away. So it's really not a boon time for us. Despite all of these buildings popping up and the rhetoric you hear from incumbents, it's not a boom. This isn't success that we're experiencing. It's just not. It's not. It looks like it because these things are shiny and huge and you can point to them. But our businesses still struggle to open during the day. Some of them choose whole days of the week to stay closed because it's better for their books. And I'd like to see that change, but it can't be only up to the businesses. The city has a real role to play in supplementing what they need to get themselves confident enough to open their doors during the day. But it has to start with the city, that sort of effort. Fostering that kind of environment, setting forth programs so that the businesses can latch on. They deserve a lot more respect than they're getting. They really do.
Is there still federal funding available that we could earmark towards that rather than buying like holiday decorations, for example?
Well, I always think about the city's budget, and there's always room for, it's always economic development or beautification, these kind of broad terms, and there's big numbers attached to them. And that's what I want to really pull apart. I want to get a front row seat, the mayor's chair, and really pull that stuff apart, because you can't just throw big numbers at something that's a vague term and hope everybody goes, oh,
Yeah.
well, they're going to solve it because they're going to
Yeah.
beautify downtown.
right.
I mean, you can make an empty building beautiful, but I kind of want it filled,
Right.
you know?
And it needs more than just looks. And you were saying, we're not in a boom. That's when planning is most important. I know Seanice would agree.
Well, I mean, and that's where my focus would be if I were elected to city council. It's really coming up with looking at how we make decisions surrounding budgets, making sure that the things that we say we believe in, the things that is important to our community, that our voters tell us is important, that we then say is important, that our policies and our actions actually reflect that. And so I came up with a tool that we can use with that process called the scorecard. And it's just a really great way to hold ourselves accountable. Because the city council is really the check and balance to the executive office, which is the mayor's office. And so while we would want to have a nice working relationship, we are the group that provides that check and balance. And so we have to make sure that we're stepping into that. So some of the things that the city has said is important is things like equity and inclusion. We declared racism a public health crisis a couple of years ago, and we haven't revisited or implemented any policy that reflects that directly. Economic impact. We want to look at what we're doing, how that's impacting our economic development in the city, environmental impact, and that's really important, especially being a member of the Green Party. We want to make sure that the policies that were implemented, the things we're doing, what is the impact? And so we're giving all of these areas, community engagement. I think we don't have enough discourse with the community around important topics that are affecting everyone. And we just kind of make decisions. When I say we, I mean the city makes decisions in silos and not involving the community. Obviously, looking at legal and ethical compliance, long-term impact. Again, that's talking about the planning that you talked about, Keith. I think we often look at short-term solutions and not really have that long-term planning mindset. Budget, obviously, health and safety. And then lastly, and very important to me, is a historical redress and community advancement. And I really think that it's important that we address issues that we have done in this city that we think we can just easily move away from. And it continues to impact us. And I think we cannot move forward as a whole community until we start to look at redress. And I would love for us to implement policies relating to that.
I'm thinking, as you're talking, that taking redress into consideration would inform our future decisions too, because personally, I was pretty shocked when the Fort Trumbull redevelopment plan came to play, because they still hadn't filled the spaces that were torn down when Shaw's Cove was redeveloped.
Yep.
And I think if we had really looked at what happened at Shaw's Cove, we might have chosen a different path for Fort Trumbull, because Shaw Cove, parts of it remained empty for 40 years before something was built there. And I'm so happy to see something built there now, but is it going to benefit the city so much it was worth waiting 40 years for, rather than, Leon talked about a survey of empty buildings. I'd like to see a survey of empty parcels to figure out each of these little gaps in our streetscape. What should we do with them? They could be good as a pocket park for open space, but there could be buildings that house different kinds of activities that would be a more profitable way to use that space. And I don't think we're really looking at it that way.
No, we're not. And so, and that's a part of that planning that needs to take place, and really not paying lip service to a lot of the issues. I was at the when I was at the Innovation Center's opening reception, the mayor talked about giving recognition to the fact that New London sits on Native American land,
Oh.
stolen land. I mean, this
Yeah.
very
Did he
you
use the
know,
phrase stolen
nice
land?
speech
Wow.
relating to that. And my first thought was, we've also, no one addresses the stolen labor. So stolen land and stolen labor of the American freedmen that helped build New London and where New London's wealth sits
Right.
also needs to be addressed. And we can't focus solely on Native American because now we're getting funding from the casinos. That's how I tie it into. And we talked. I mean, and that was what they talked about at the opening. You know, they
You're-
were partners.
That's
Yeah.
what drove it. That's what drove
Which
it.
is great. So it's not to say that partnerships aren't great, but what it did highlight for me was the disconnect with other groups that were equally, egregious, horrific history that just gets a plaque maybe in a painted wall, and that is it.
And if you look at lots, not
not-
so long ago, 60 or 70 years ago, in redevelopment, the neighborhoods that were lost because the second span of the Gold Star Bridge went in, and that second part of the highway was just built insanely with all these weird
Absolutely.
East
roundabouts,
London, right.
acres and acres of land. There was home ownership, and where a lot of the black home ownership was in New London.
Home
Part-
ownership and businesses,
Right.
black-owned businesses, were also lost. And I think we often focus on home ownership, but when you talk about decimating a black community because of segregation, we had our own businesses that
Sure.
were also there, and so those things were lost and never recovered for many people.
The same as Central Park.
Yeah,
Yeah,
You
Yep.
had the whole community just taken away.
absolutely.
yeah. And we know now, we might have known before, but we really know now, New London Landmarks has done some research about the deed restrictions, south of Willits,
Redlining.
Yep.
that, only a certain group of people were allowed to buy houses in those areas for a long time, and there were deed restrictions,
Yep.
that spelled it all out. And to this day, I kind of, in my planning and zoning role, when anyone says the word deed restriction, I think, there might be some purposes, positive purposes for deed restrictions, but I feel like we still haven't come to terms that deed restrictions were really used for awful reasons for many, many years in this
Absolutely.
city.
And even outside of the deed restrictions, there was also just, expectations, cultural norms,
Yeah.
unspoken rules.
Right.
And up until very recent, even when
bet.
I was buying my home, that was something that we came across, that, my family and I came across. Wasn't anything written that said we couldn't purchase there, but there were eyebrows
The
raised,
vibes
I'll
from
say
Right.
that.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I mean, if we're being honest and, having a transparent conversation, that was 22 years ago.
Yeah.
But that was an issue.
It is an
Yeah.
issue because if you're buying a house, reactions like that matter. If you're thinking that you're going to stay there and be there and you get a cold reception from the neighborhood, that's a big investment. Some people could say, oh, yeah, buck it up, but there's nuances there, that make it really impactful if you just stop and think about it for a second. Like, think about what someone's going through.
And it's not unique to New London. And so I don't want to stay in that space, but I do think, as a city, as a country, these are things that we just really need to have conversation about, and then also implement actions to address those in ways that we can, tangible ways that we can. I'm also very interested in looking at the development that's going on in the city, which is, again, great on one hand. We see all this new development going up, but if we're not paying attention, it also can have, catastrophic negative impact for our community. And I was looking at some of the developers and projects that they've done around the country, and I'm saying to myself, why aren't those types of projects being done in New London, where we're holding developers accountable to what our city is going to look like? Some developers are creating open spaces that are open to the whole city, the whole community. They're involved in developing entrepreneurs in that city
Investing
where they're
in
building. So they
education.
become a part of it, as opposed to just a developer that's build luxury houses and they're not integrated or connected with the city in any real way.
Yeah, and cities, like gated areas, just have a funny feel to them. I wanted to ask you one other question, though, because your work is helping people build wealth who did not inherit wealth. And in some ways, I see a parallel between that and our city that has resources available in some ways, but I think the cities in Connecticut sometimes do have a lot of wealth stolen out of us because we have all the nonprofits for the whole region here, and so we miss out on that property tax revenue. So is there anything in personal wealth building that could also be applicable to, like, municipal wealth building?
Absolutely. I think that definitely what you do in your personal finances can translate to how a city is run. Living within your means is one, living within your budget. Definitely allocating funds to the areas that's going to have the greatest impact and not just on short-term solutions. We always talk about, when we talk about investing, is long-term investing, long-term planning.
Cities need to do that too.
Yeah.
A big part of what the city needs to think about as
A big
well.
part of what it's not doing.
And then also thinking about the next generation, right? What are you leaving to your children? Who's going to inherit what we create today? And that's true with personal planning, personal finances, but also true when you think about running a city and what we're stewards of. Because really, this is what, as elected officials, that's who we are. We're stewards
Right.
of what we're creating today and what that's going to look like tomorrow. It's not about self-gain or and I think a lot of self-ego, sometimes that comes into play. But we're public servants.
First,
Emphasis
right.
on servants.
Right.
And I think that that's something that's often forgotten or missed.
I
when
like
we're running for
the
office.
budget point you brought up because it makes me think of something Keith said in your, when you do your research, looking into the
Right.
programs that you want to push forward. When you hear the school administration say, well, that's just too expensive.
Right.
And you say that's not how you prioritize your finances.
Right.
Everybody's most expensive priority is usually their
mortgage or
rent,
rent.
their rent or their mortgage.
Right. Especially.
And you
in
never
the-
get to say, I'm going to shelve that
Right. That's
for this
a
month
low
because it's a
priority.
little bit too much. You make it work. You find a way to
Right.
make it work
So that's
if it's important.
right, and that's it. Like, we prioritize things by importance, and it's an exaggerated analogy, but because the things that I'm asking for aren't so crucial, but they are important in my opinion. I think in the opinion of many others in this city. But I'm also a big fan of the Green Party's concept of look for a small achievable improvement, do it, repeat. So anybody who's seen any of my literature or heard me speak in public know that most of New London are not native English speakers. We have an extremely diverse city, and the top languages are Spanish, English, and French in that order, especially in our school district. In the adult community, English may be edging them out, but our school district especially, which is what I'm concerned with, I try to stay to my lane as much as possible, even though I'm very interested in what these guys have to say, and I'm really glad that they tell me their ideas. But so multi-language learning is extremely important, and high-level multi-language learning is extremely important. Not just English as a second language, or French, that we got in high school, right? We need to understand how important it is for this community to be multilingual, and it is expensive, and it's not easy, and there are many families in here who had a few years in our immersion language learning program that was at CB Jennings. It was Spanish English. Half the students are native Spanish, half the students are native English. They learn all of their subjects except English in Spanish. And that's good for both speakers.
Absolutely.
The English speakers get extremely good Spanish, and the Spanish speakers become better Spanish speakers. They learn professional, scientific, historical, mathematical terms, not merely communication, basic communication or conversational.
Also, becoming literate and being able to write,
Right.
because
Being able to
one
write.
thing that
They're
was-
not always the same, right?
Right.
yeah, one thing that surprised me when I was in college, I took some classes with Spanish-speaking students. They all spoke Spanish with each other, and when the professor said, "Oh, you can write your final report in English. You won't get an A, but I prefer Spanish, but you
Spanish,
can do it in English." They were just as happy as I was,
Right.
even happier, because
Because
though
writing
they
in their own
spoke
language.
fluently, they actually couldn't write Spanish well, and these immersion programs really do help.
They do, because they are not the same skills. They're not learned the same way.
Right.
Reading and writing and speaking are in the language center, but they're done differently. And honestly, one of the mistakes that many public schools make is they try to teach you to understand, speak, and read and write at the same time, which is not how you learned your language.
Right.
What you did was you first learned to understand,
Correct.
and then you copied the sounds that you heard, then you attached those to symbols. And it's why people have bad accents, even though they may be fluent in a foreign language, is because that was done at the same time, and their brains connect the vowel sound of their native language to that symbol, and they can't get out of it. But when you get those sounds ingrained first,
Right.
you learn better. So I'm passionate about foreign languages in general. I have a multicultural family. I speak English, Spanish, and Italian. Like I say to all the Spanish speakers in this community, hablo español, pero como un niño pequeño.
Yeah.
Pero hablo.
The point about people learning those different aspects of language differently is so important, and I think it's lost on a lot of people. It makes me think of a story my mom told me when she was in middle school age. They spoke Spanish at home, did my grandparents and my aunts and uncles. And my mom was in Spanish class and didn't do so well on a Spanish test. And the teacher says, "Griselda, you speak Spanish. Why did you do so bad on this test?" And without missing a beat, I guess my mom says, "They all speak English and they fail English tests all the time."
Right.
Why is this? Why is this something only?
But
It makes the point that
why you
people
being
learn
that
different
way?
things different ways.
And they do, yeah.
But funding something like that, I have to draw a connection because I love Seanice pulling apart the idea that we could expect something back
Right.
immediately
Right.
and throughout the process from these investors that want to build in our city.
Yes.
That's not a crazy idea.
It
that we don't
actually
give.
could be funded by one of these developments or partially
Thank you.
funded. Very
Because
easily.
that's one thing Seanice didn't list this time, but I've heard her mention it before, that they also are asked to invest in the school system.
And other communities, they build the same contractors that build in our communities for tax incentives that cost us and give us nothing in return.
Nothing, absolutely nothing. And when that period ends, they could leave.
Right.
And that's not something maybe we can stop them from doing when the period is over.
It's not
But
illegal,
in the
but it's
time that they're here, what are we getting from them? And that is fascinating to me, and I want to explore all those options. Just imagine if there was such a crucial program our school needed. We couldn't find the funds for it.
There's
Didn't we
ways.
just approve the 500 units or whatever it is
Right.
on Fort Trumbull?
yeah.
What are they giving us for those tax breaks? How about a multilingual language program?
I don't think
Exactly.
they have tax breaks yet
Like, not
because
yet, but it's-
planning and zoning doesn't give the tax breaks. City council does.
Right.
So
Can I-
planning
can I-
and
can I
zoning
conduct-
But that's the
approves
plan without
plan.
getting into the minutia too
Can I
much,
conduct
right?
a scientific survey? Show of hands, who thinks City Council will let them get tax breaks and ask them for nothing?
Yes.
Yeah.
You know?
Unless
And
it gets elected.
I want to bring out that every 5 years the city has to renew the City and Town Development Act,
Right.
which is the state legislation that allows us to give these tax breaks.
Yeah.
And I won't ever say it's a bad piece of legislation, but I think we really have to think about what we're getting for whatever
return.
tax breaks.
We
Right.
just have to
And-
negotiate
Yeah.
the process better
Sure.
and really look at how these developers are becoming a part of our city and how they
Right.
can engage, and set that as the expectation.
And the contribution could be lasting. If it just use that as an example again.
And you
If
see how these three offices, when we're focused on the same goals, like planning,
Yep.
can work together.
I mean, just imagine if Pfizer was asked to invest in something really substantial, important in our school system.
Right.
We know that they left eventually.
Right.
But did the program
But
have
they
to
could've-
end?
they could've
Perhaps
built the
not.
school,
So we
they-
got something out of it, even though they
Right.
cut and run.
Right.
Did we get anything out of it instead of just a total loss, just a
And-
big L, and that's
in a
what we got.
In a failed Supreme Court case, Yeah. Sorry, Rana.
Yeah.
I know it's painful. It is for us all. But so it is. It's really important. New London used to have this kind of high quality program available, and actually we have
Right.
2 magnet schools that could easily fit a program like this in without it touching their magnet certification. One is CB Jennings. We already had
Yes.
it. The fact that they're international bachelorette means nothing. They would prefer it. It would
Yeah,
only
I would think it would
only
enhance an international.
It would only enhance people who are
focus
interested in that
degree.
anyway. And so
Absolutely.
that speaks to the people coming out of district that get more funding into our schools. But also our multicultural magnet. It would do nothing but enhance it.
Right.
If we had an immersion language French and the multicultural and immersion language Spanish at CB Jennings, it would be a huge thing for New London. It'd be good for New London, and it would be good for the reputation and attractiveness of New London schools.
Absolutely.
But what I get back was it was hard. And right there, and I have ideas too. It helps that I'm retired and I'm obsessed with it. And I don't like to assign motives, you know what I mean? But it's not being done on the board. And it's, it just was dismissed.
Right.
That's it. When the voters asked them, and this was a question asked at debate, is that coming back? Like, no.
Wow.
That was essentially it. And the reason is it's expensive and hard. Well, everything in the city is expensive and hard. We still have roads.
Yeah, that's what
Kinda.
the fight
And
is. I mean,
sometimes we have road and road and road and road.
we're asking to be elected to represent the voters, but what does that look like? It doesn't mean like I introduce myself and say I
Right.
represent this part of the community.
And sure,
it
you
means
have
you
to
fight
say-
for them.
You have to say yes and no, but like if somebody shows interest, I get tired of hearing that. I have heard that answer in council from mayors and from the board. It's too hard.
Okay,
was
now
too
it's a good
difficult.
time for us to hype your movie.
Yeah.
You're a
in that
director, too?
vein, No, in that vein, we're having a Zoom presentation twice, Wednesday and Saturday.
Yes, we are going to be showing a hour-long documentary called "Speaking in Tongues" about multilingual education in San Francisco public schools.
Right.
It's probably about a 10-year-old movie. It's really inspirational. We are showing it as a Zoom because it is really hard to get people to come out. And we have a Facebook event at the New London Green Party Facebook page. And it has the Zoom link, us02web.zoom.us, that if you click on it from the Facebook event, it gets you to it. I'm not sure it will if you just type it in. If anyone wants the link, you can just email info@nlgreens.org, and we will be happy to give you the information to register. It's being shown at 6:30 to 7:30 with a discussion tomorrow night, Wednesday, and then 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday.
And you can register anytime, and
Yeah.
it'll actually give you a reminder, which is good.
Yeah, so we have about 5 minutes left.
Can I really quickly just do
Yeah.
my second issue, which is we don't have an interpreter solution in the New London Public Schools. We're required to support the top 3 languages so the families can get assistance in understanding what their children need and what they need to be told. And since we have so many multilingual staff, they're leveraging them, but it's not their jobs. It's a problem. I don't like to say problem, it's a challenge, because this is
Right.
problem implies it might not be solvable. A challenge is always solvable.
Absolutely.
Right.
So, and these are challenges. And I know members on the board, they personally confided in me, they're frustrated with it too. But again, how do we pay for it? And I've reached out to the Board of Eds of other cities and asked them what their solution is. So I have ideas.
Okay, so now we have 3 minutes left.
Sorry.
And so, no, that's fine. We haven't had call-ins tonight, but these are in between all their work hours. They're really accessible individuals. And you can email them, you can remember this, leon@nlgreens.org, keith@nlgreens.org, or Seanice@nlgreens.org. And they will get the email and answer questions, or you can get in touch with us on our Facebook page or our website. There are a bunch of ways. I also wanted
can
to
text
invite
me, too.
people to election night. We will be at our office at 18 to 20 Masonic Street to get the numbers back. We traditionally have Indian food. I don't know why, but we probably will this year too.
Because we like it.
And yes, and we'll have champagne, win or lose. But yes, come join us. And if anyone wants to volunteer during this last week, handing out literature or making phone calls, once again, that info@nlgreens.org forwards to about 5 of us, so someone will answer. And I don't know if we even have time. Maybe each of you can say 15 seconds worth of
Sure.
goodbye.
Well, this campaign season, getting to know a lot more New Londoners and talking to them and understanding that the issues I have with the city are shared by most of the community. I think our chances are high that people will come out on election day and support us because they support our ideas. But we just ask that you get engaged and try to learn as much as you can about all candidates. And in an effort to do that, I wanted people to know that on my website, leon4newlondon.com, you'll find a link to this interview and all of the other interviews that these candidates have done, so that in the last week you can make a better assessment of us and our ideas.
I want to thank everybody for their support and for talking to me and meeting with me. And what I really want to see is more voter participation. Like Seanice said, like Eddie said, everybody is, people seem to be wanting change. And there's room for that. There's room for us, and there's room for the Republicans and the Democrats too. But we have to get more voters out there. So on my website, you can register to vote.
Okay, and now you have 15 seconds.
I'm sorry.
They said it all.
Yeah.
They said it all.
Oh, good. And I'll say one more
was
thing
gracious.
and then end the show as asked. When you vote, when you look at your ballot, look at it from the bottom up, not the top down.
Yes.
And you can choose up to 7 people to vote for, but don't, if you only vote on line A, you won't know what all your choices are. So there's the ballot, line D, line C, B, A, and it's all the names. So
And
get
that's
in
on the
touch.
sites too. That's
It's on all our websites,
Right.
and feel free to get in touch with us. We'll take a break next week from Thinking Green, and in 2 weeks we'll start back with, I don't know, heavy issues
Maybe
that are
addictive
not
issues.
I hope so. Have a good night, and we'll talk to you in a couple of weeks and see you on Election Day.
Thanks, man.